The first time Isabella Morales ever saw Alexander Hawthorne cry, he was dying in a 20,000 square foot mansion that smelled like bleach, lilies, and money. She had just finished scrubbing the marble floor in the East Wing foyer on her hands and knees, because the automated floor cleaner had broken again and Mr. Hawthorne hated streaks, when she heard the sound. It was small, almost swallowed by the hum of machines keeping him alive, but it cut straight through her chest. A broken, wet gasp. A man who had once bought islands on whims, now sobbing like a child who'd lost his mother in a grocery store. Isabella stood slowly, rubber gloves dripping, heart hammering. She should have walked away. Maids weren't supposed to see this. They were supposed to be invisible. But something pulled her toward the cracked bedroom door. Inside, moonlight spilled across the hospital bed that had replaced the antique four-poster. Alexander lay propped against a mountain of pillows, 4 lines snaking into both arms, oxygen hissing through the cannula in his nose. His famous silver hair was gone. Chemo had taken it months ago, leaving only pale scalp and hollow cheeks. The man who'd once been on the cover of Forbes in a $3,000 suit now looked like a melted candle. He didn't notice her at first. He was staring at a photograph in his shaking hands, a little boy in a private school blazer, maybe 8 years old, standing next to a younger, healthier Alexander. The boy's smile was shy. Alexander's arm was around him like a shield. "I'm sorry, Jamie," he whispered to the picture. "Daddy's so sorry." That was the moment Isabella stepped fully into the room, forgetting every rule she'd been given on her first day: never speak unless spoken to. Never enter the master suite without knocking. Never, ever let him see you cry. "Mr. Hawthorne." Her voice cracked. He startled, eyes wild, then ashamed. He tried to hide the photo under the blanket like a guilty teenager. I heard," she started. "Please," he rasped. "Just, go. I don't want you to see me like this." But she didn't leave. Something in his voice, the same voice that once barked orders at senators and CEOs, now sounded like it was drowning. She walked to the bed and gently pulled the photo out from under the blanket. The boy had Alexander's sharp cheekbones and Isabella's own dark eyes. "Your son?" she asked softly. He closed his eyes. Tears slid into the creases of his face. He was 8 when that was taken. He'd be 26 now. Isabella's breath caught. Everyone in America knew the story, or thought they did. Jamie Hawthorne, only child of billionaire Alexander Hawthorne, killed at 19 in a drunk driver when he was 19. The tabloids had feasted for months. Alexander never spoke of it publicly again. He just got richer, colder, lonelier. She placed the photo on the nightstand, facing him. "I lost my little brother when I was 15, she said quietly. "Gang crossfire in Chicago. Wrong place, wrong time. They never caught who did it." Alexander opened his eyes. For the first time in the 18 months she'd worked for him, he really looked at her. "You never said. You never asked, sir." A ghost of a smile. "Fair." Silence stretched, filled only by the beep of monitors and the ocean crashing against the cliffs below the Malibu estate. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, he said, "I'm scared, Isabella." She sat on the edge of the chair beside the bed, the one no one was allowed to sit in, and reached for his hand without thinking better of it. "It's okay to be scared," she whispered. He shook his head. "No. You don't understand. I'm running out of time. And there's something I need to ask you. Something no amount of money can buy. And I'm terrified you'll hate me for it." Her stomach twisted. She'd heard rumors from the other staff. Dying men sometimes got ideas. But Alexander Hawthorne had never once looked at her that way. Not in 18 months. Not even when she'd been forced to help him shower after the chemo made him too weak to stand alone. He took a rattling breath. I need, one night. With you. Just one. Not like that, he added quickly when her eyes widened. God, no. I mean, I want to feel like a father again. For one night. I want to watch stupid movies and eat junk food and laugh until my ribs hurt. I want someone to tuck me in and tell me it's going to be okay even when we both know it isn't. I want to know what it feels like to be loved without a prenup. Just once before I die. Isabella stared at him, throat tight. I've spent 40 years building an empire so my son would never want for anything, he continued, voice breaking. And I forgot to build a relationship. I was always going to have time later. Later became never. And now I have everything except the only thing that ever mattered. He looked at her then, really looked, and his eyes were Jamie's eyes in the photograph. You're 24, he said. Same age Jamie would have been if. You laugh like he did. You hum when you dust the library. You sneak extra food to the groundskeeper's dog even though I told you not to. You're kind even when no one's watching. I've watched you save every spider instead of killing it. I've seen you cry in the laundry room when you think no one's around because your mom's medical bills are drowning you. You're good, Isabella. In a way I never was. She couldn't speak. Her heart was a hummingbird against her ribs. I know it's insane, he whispered. I know I'm just a dying old man with too much money and not enough soul. But I have 6 weeks, maybe 8. The doctors are sure now. And I don't want to die having never felt ordinary love. The kind that doesn't come with stock options. He tried to laugh. It came out a sob. You can say no. You should say no. I'll double your salary for the rest of your life either way. I had to ask. Because you're the closest thing to a daughter I have left. Isabella stood up slowly. His face crumpled, he thought she was leaving. Instead, she walked to the door, closed it softly, and turned the lock. Then she kicked off her shoes, pulled the scratchy maid's apron over her head, and climbed onto the bed beside him, careful of the 4 lines, and wrapped her arms around the men who owned half of Silicon Valley. He froze. Shoo, she said into his shoulder. I'm here. He cried then. Hard. The kind of crying that shakes your whole body and steals your breath. She held him through it, stroking what was left of his hair, whispering the same Spanish lullaby her mother had sung to her when the world felt too big. When the storm passed, she pulled back just enough to look at him. One night, she said firmly. But we do it my way. He blinked, confused. Tomorrow, she continued, I'm off the clock. You're not my boss. I'm not your maid. We're just Alexander and Isabella. And we're going to have the best damn ordinary night 2 broken people can have. But first, she reached for the call button and pressed it. The night nurse appeared in under 10 seconds. Mr. Hawthorne is having a rough night, Isabella said calmly. I'm staying. No interruptions unless it's an emergency. And bring extra blankets. The good ones. The nurse raised an eyebrow but nodded and disappeared. Alexander stared at her like she'd grown wings. Isabella. Rule 1, she said, poking his chest gently. You call me Bella. Only my mom and Jamie ever called me Bella. His lip trembled. Rule 2, she continued. We're watching every Disney movie you missed because you were too busy buying companies. Rule 3, pizza. Real pizza. None of that gluten-free cardboard you pretend to like. Rule 4, you're allowed to cry, laugh, or throw up, chemo's a bitch, and I'm not going anywhere. He laughed then. A real laugh, rusty from disuse. Rule 5, she whispered, laying her head on his shoulder. Tonight, you're not dying. You're just mine. And for the first time in years, Alexander Hawthorne fell asleep without drugs, with a 24-year-old virgin maid from Chicago curled against his side like she belonged there. That was the beginning. What followed was 6 weeks was the slowest, most beautiful love story no tabloid ever got wind of. The next night, Bella showed up in jeans and an old Cubs hoodie, carrying 2 large pepperoni pizzas and a 6-pack of root beer, because Alexander had never had root beer in his life. They ate on the floor of the bed while watching The Lion King. He cried during, "Can you feel the love tonight?" She didn't tease him. She just handed him tissues and let him hold her hand. The night after that, she taught him how to make chocolate chip cookies from scratch in the industrial kitchen at 2 a.m. Flour went everywhere. He laughed so hard he had to sit on the floor because his lungs couldn't take it. She took a picture, his first selfie ever, and set it as his phone background before he could protest. They built a blanket fort in the home theater because he'd never done that, even as a kid. She read him Harry Potter aloud, doing all the voices. He fell asleep during Goblet of Fire with his head in her lap, and she stayed there until morning, fingers combing through the stubble on his scalp. One night, she pushed him in a wheelchair down to the private beach at sunset. The nurses pretended not to notice when she didn't come back until dawn. They sat in the sand and she told him about growing up poor in Pilsen, about her mom's lupus, about dreaming of being a nurse but never having the money for school. He told her about being a scared 20-year-old kid from Detroit who lied about his age to get into MIT, about meeting Jamie's mother at a protest, about the day she left him when Jamie was 3 because you love your company more than you love us. He signed over $10 million to pay off her mother's medical debt and fund her nursing school the next day, she told him, without telling her first. When she found out and tried to refuse, he just said, "Let me do one thing right before I go." Some nights were harder. The pain got bad. He'd scream through morphine dreams about Jamie calling him from the car right before the crash, "Dad, I'm scared." Bella held him through every nightmare, whispering, "I've got you. I'm here. You're not alone." One stormy night, he asked her to marry him. Not for real. A pretend ceremony on the balcony with the thunder as organ music. She wore one of his old Harvard sweatshirts as a dress. He wore pajamas. They wrote vows on napkins. "I promise to love you for the rest of my life," he said, voice shaking. "However long that is." "I promise to love you for the rest of mine," she answered. "However long that is." They exchanged Hershey's Kiss rings and kissed each other's foreheads like it was the most sacred thing in the world. 3 days before the end, he couldn't get out of bed anymore. The hospice nurse said it was time. Bella crawled in beside him anyway. "Tell me the story again," he whispered. "About the night we met." So she told him. Every detail. How he cried holding Jamie's picture. How terrified she'd been. How something in her heart had said stay. When she finished, he smiled. Actually smiled. "I was so jealous of the men who would get you one day," he whispered. "I wanted to be him. Even if it was pretend." "You were," she said fiercely. "You are." He died at 4:17 a.m. with her singing the Spanish lullaby into his ear and his hand wrapped around hers. The funeral was obscene: senators, celebrities, 3 former presidents. Bella stood in the back in a simple black dress, the Hershey's Kiss ring on a chain around her neck. No one knew who she was. Except the lawyer who approached her afterward with an envelope. Inside was a letter in Alexander's shaky handwriting and a deed. The letter read, "Bella, you gave me the only thing I couldn't buy, a daughter's love. I rewrote my will the night you taught me how to make cookies. Everything, the company, the houses, the jets, the $10 billion, it's yours. Not because you earned it. Because you taught me what enough feels like. Use it to become the nurse you always wanted to be. Build a children's hospital wing and name it after Jamie. And when you find someone who looks at you the way you looked at a dying man, let him love you out loud. I'll be watching, kid. All my love, for all your life. Dad." She cried in the cemetery until the groundskeeper asked if she was okay. 6 years later, the Jamie Hawthorne Children's Wing opened at UCLA Medical Center. The dedication plaque reads, "In memory of a boy who never got to grow up, and in honor of the woman who taught his father how to be human again." Bella, Dr. Isabella Morales Hawthorne, now top pediatric oncologist in the country, stood at the podium in her white coat, Hershey's Kiss ring still around her neck. She looked out at the crowd, her mom in the front row, healthy now, and hundreds of kids who would live because of what one dying billionaire and one virgin maid decided to do with one ordinary night. "Love," she said, voice steady, "isn't about how much time you have. It's about what you do with the time you're given." Alexander Hawthorne had 6 weeks left when he asked me to borrow my heart. I gave it freely. And in return, he gave me a future. She touched the ring. The greatest fortune isn't money. It's getting to be someone's home, even if it's only for a little while. And somewhere, if you believe in that sort of thing, a man with silver hair and a little boy with dark eyes stood together smiling down, finally at peace. Because sometimes the richest thing a dying billionaire can leave behind isn't an empire. It's proof that it's never too late to become the person your child always believed you could be. And sometimes, the poorest thing a virgin maid can give away is the one thing that makes her the wealthiest woman in the world. A heart brave enough to love someone the world had given up on.